Hello, everyone, again. Thank you again, and this is the second session for this morning. So right now we're going to look at airports and multimodality in Europe. Same format as the previous session, so there will be two presentations and then a few questions afterwards. So I will start the conversation off and then I will open up to the audience again. So again, please do start thinking and don't be too mean with your question. I will introduce Julie Bouy, who is the advisor to the European coordinator for the Atlantic Corridor of the European Commission, and also Helga Jonuschat, who is the director of new mobility at Dornier Consulting. But to start, I will introduce Julie. Here you go.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Julie Bouy. I work in DG Move, European Commission. I work in the unit that is in charge of the Trans-European Network of Transport, and I'm also especially the advisor of the European coordinator, François Bosch, for the Atlantic European Transport Corridor. In this presentation, I will focus more on the infrastructure and the connection of the airport to the Trans-European Network of Transport. So I will present you the TNT regulation as it was revised in 2024, especially with a focus on the airport rail connection and on the sustainable urban mobility plans. And then I will also give you a little bit of information of the upcoming activities that we are carrying out in DG Move, especially on the future EU high-speed rail master plan communication and on the study that we are about to launch on the connectivity of major TNT airport by long-distance rail. So starting with the TNT, I don't know how far you are familiar with the Trans-European Network of Transport. So it's a regulation. It has been revised in 2024. It entered into force in July 2024. It defined the European transport network in 3 layers of priority. It defined also a set of requirements for interoperability for different modes of transport or for development of the infrastructure. So it's a gradual completion of the network in 3 steps, 2030 the core network, 2040 the extended network, and 2050 the comprehensive network. It also defined 9 European transport corridors to facilitate the cross-border and to foster the cross-border development of the infrastructure, let's say. Plus 2 horizontal priorities, the European Rail Traffic Management System and the European Maritime Space. So with this revision, we have reinforced or added new infrastructure standards for all modes of transport. We also have strengthened our TNT governance, especially the role of the coordinators. And we have also reinforced the regulation regarding the new arising political priorities, such as climate resilience, maintenance connection with neighboring countries, etc., etc. So this is the map of the European transport corridors. You see there are 9 corridors. The yellow one is the Atlantic one, so it's the one where I am working especially in my daily work. So now, what the TNT regulation require for the air transport. So overall, the objective of the chapter on air transport is to have a better connectivity and integration of the airport with the rail network, but also to green more the airport operations. So we have introduced mandatory requirements such as the railway connection of airport, terminal availability, and also we added a new requirement for the provision of preconditioned air supply. But I want to focus in this presentation, especially the connection by rail to the airport. So we have 2 new requirements. Basically, by 2040, all the European TNT airports that have more than 12 million passengers shall be connected to the TNT rail network, including high-speed rail, and this to allow for long-distance rail services. Then, for the airports that have an annual passenger number between 4 and 12 million. By 2050, the requirement is to be connected to the TNT rail network or to the corresponding urban node by rail, metro, light rail, tramways, cable car, or exceptionally with other zero-emission public transport solutions. We calculate, to define which airports are concerned by these two requirements, we will take the annual passenger volume as a reference of the we will take into account the last 3 years average Eurostat data available from the start of the TNT regulation, so 18th of July 2024, and at least the last 3 average number. I wanted also in this presentation to just say a word also on the obligation of regarding the urban nodes. So this revision of the TNT regulation also focus on the urban node. We have defined 431 urban nodes on the TNT in Europe. This definition was based on a methodology, basically the urban nodes that have more than 100,000 inhabitants or that are the main nodes in a NUTS 2 region. I here included the definition of the urban node because I wanted to highlight that we consider the urban node as an urban area where elements of transport infrastructure of the TNT for passenger and freight, such as ports, but also airport, railway station, etc., are connected with other elements of that infrastructure. And what we wanted to do, so with this revision of regulation, we wanted to make it mandatory for all the 431 urban nodes to develop a so-called Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, so what we call SUMP in our jargon, to promote zero and low emission mobility. So among the different requirements, we also ask each member states to define a national SUMP contact point. And by 31st December 2027, each urban node should adopt this and monitor this plan. The idea is to make sure that in the urban nodes, that the local authorities are talking with all the actors of the mobility, the railway infrastructure manager, the railway operators, the airport, the road operators, etc., and to make sure that there is a plan and a long-term vision to promote efficient and zero and low emission mobility, including for logistics, not only for passenger. So in a nutshell, I wanted to emphasize this point of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan because we believe that the airport should also align the SUMP, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, should also be aligned with the long-term plan for airport development. So I really wanted to focus on this aspect in this presentation. Now, coming to the second part of my presentation, I wanted to also say a few words on the upcoming activities that we are developing within DG Move. So first, it is the communication that we are about to publish in coming weeks on connecting Europe through high-speed rail. The background for this communication, so first, in the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy that the Commission published in 2020, we have high target for increasing the high-speed rail traffic and infrastructure. In the mission letter from our President Ursula von der Leyen to our Commissioner Tsitsi Kostas, the Commissioner in charge of Transport and Tourism, there were a specific requirement to develop a plan for an ambitious European high-speed rail network to help connect European capitals, also including through night trains. With this communication, of course, we will not create new things. We build on what is existing. We are building on existing initiatives. So first of all, we will not create new maps. Our basis is the legal TNT requirement, TNT regulation that has been adopted last year. In this regulation, you can see that we have maps, I will show after, but maps with the railway map with an indicative speed of the line. So you can see the network, which is with a speed higher than 200 kilometers, and the conventional network, which is lower. It also built on different initiatives. So in 2021, we had adopted an action plan to boost long-distance and cross-border passenger rail services. The objective of this plan, of course, is to make the EU more connected and competitive, to also showcase the EU leading role in developing high-speed rail. And on this last block, you can see that the investment needs is very high. This is just the high-speed rail, new high-speed rail line that have to be developed. So if we look at the cost of the core network, for instance, we are around 500 billion. But just for the high-speed rail, up to 2040 here, it's 345 billion that are needed. So our vision with this communication is clearly to have by 2040 a European high-speed rail network linking capital and major cities. We have clear example of improvements. So for instance, Madrid-Lisbon, which is on the Atlantic corridor. Today, there is no rail services between the two capitals. And if you would develop your service, it would be at least 9 hours. The European Commission has co-financed the development of a new high-speed line in Portugal and in Spain. It's not yet completed. From next year, we should be able to have a connection in 6 hours. And by 2034, we will be able to connect the two cities in 3 hours. We have other examples like Prague-Vienna, which is today 5 hours. And when the high-speed rail will be developed, it will be 2 hours 15. We want also with this communication to promote affordable and competitive services because we think that high-speed rail is a clear sustainable alternative to short-haul flights and long-car trips. And we want also to promote the leadership of the European rail supply industry. And this is the last information point of my presentation. It's about the upcoming study that we have launched actually in the third quarter of this year, and that should be finalized by the third quarter of next year. And it's a study on the connectivity of the major TNT airport by long-distance rail. So I'm not directly in charge of this study. So I try I discuss with my colleagues and we prepare this presentation together. But I really focus this presentation on the term of reference, basically, of the study that we are launching. So we start with the problem definition. So in Europe, we have some airports that are already well connected with high-speed rail, like Frankfurt, Charles de Gaulle, Amsterdam. We mentioned them before. But sometimes they can still suffer from restricted rail capacity, or they are struggling to address development constraints. Other airports are poorly connected to the railway network. For instance, Lisbon is connected just by metro, Athens by light rail, and Malaga by a commuter rail. So then other airports are not connected at all, like Dublin, for instance, there is no rail or metro, it's only bus. Budapest as well, or Alicante. And then there are also airports that today are not yet reaching the threshold of 12 million, which is the threshold to be targeted by the TNT requirements, but are really close to be. They are recovering from COVID-19. And if we look at the figures the last 3 years, they are like 9, 10, and 12 billion. So it's not yet an average of 12 million per year, but we are very close. And then we have also new airports. So member states are planning to develop new airports like Lisbon. So in Lisbon, they plan to have this new airport, but also in Chipike, near to Warsaw. So those greenfield projects are located at a certain distance from of the center of the nearest urban node. And of course, from the Commission side, we would like that those airports are clearly connected with railways and high-speed rail. The goal of this study will be first to provide the Commission with a robust assessment of the situation of all the airports that have been identified, especially in terms of connectivity to the rail, especially rail long distance and high-speed rail, but also to identify measures needed to enhance the rail usage and to address also, to identify the obstacles. This assessment should enable the Commission to draw relevant conclusions, especially in the context of the upcoming multi-financial framework, with a focus on the most important action in terms of timing and effectiveness. We hope also that this study will serve as a reference document for national authorities, railway undertaking, airport and rail infrastructure to inform their investment decision. So which airport? I mentioned it already. So will be all the airports with more than 12 million passengers a year that will be targeted by this study, plus some 10 airports that have an average traffic volume close to 12 million, and also the new major greenfield airport. The consultant that will carry out this study will also have to involve key stakeholders, railway infrastructure manager, railway undertaking, airport operators, airlines, Ministry of Transport, city authorities, etc. So this is the map. So in fact, this map is showing you the TNT, the rail core TNT network. In fact, is really all the railway lines that are in the core network corridor for passenger. So it includes also extended core. In yellow, I have highlighted all the airports that have more than 12 million passengers per year. Paris, we have both Charles de Gaulle and Orly. And then in red, I have highlighted the airports that are mentioned as between 8 and 12 million and that are also considered for the study. So the pink line, pink, yes, are the high-speed line, so the line that are with an indicative speed of more than 200 km per hour. So it's an indicative speed because clearly if you look at the high-speed line in France or in Spain, we speed at more than 350 km per hour in the design. And then the green line are the conventional passenger network, which by 2040 should be upgraded at 160 km per hour. The different tasks that we want to target in this study. So we have 4 main tasks. The first, it's an assessment of the situation as it is today. The second one will be to identify the obstacles and the measure to improve the accessibility of the airport. They will have to look at all types of barriers, so physical barriers, regulatory barriers, technical, economic, and political barriers. The task 3 will be an analysis of the investment gap and priorities, and we will ask the consultant also to make a ranking and to include the estimates of the cost of the various measures that would be identified in this task 2, both for the period 2034 and for the period 2030. And the last task will be to identify the best practices or solutions to enhance airport connectivity by long distance, including high-speed rail. Yeah, that will be the last task. And then my last slide, so what we expect here, what are for us the benefit of airport connectivity with long-distance rail and high-speed rail. So we believe that reducing the travel time to and from the airport is important, and also a better connection with long-distance rail and high-speed rail increase the catchment area of the airport. Also, we have the green objective, let's say, green benefits, so reducing greenhouse gas emission and air pollution. So by providing a viable alternative to travel by air and roads, and bringing about a modal shift to rail. It is also somehow optimizing the capacity of the airport, because if you reduce the very short flight, like we have very clear example in France, Bordeaux, Bordeaux-Paris, or in Italy, Milan-Rome. Then another benefit, of course, is to strengthen the economic ties within and between the member states and region by improving business and tourism conditions. And last, it's also supporting the production and procurement of EU rail technology, and then strengthening our European industry. So that was it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julie. I really liked that you covered the importance of both high-speed, long-distance rail, but also you focused on the role and importance of urban nodes. And to that end, I would like to introduce Helga Jonuschat, the Director of New Mobility at Dornier Consulting.
Thank you. So, thank you again from my side for this very perfect organization of this event. And I already had so many interesting talks with all the people over here. During these very interesting conversations, I realized that I'm probably a little bit exotic over here, because I'm focusing more on the airports and their role in the urban areas and those urban nodes that Julie has just presented, rather than the long distance connections. So I would like to, now 3 parts of my presentation. So first of all, I would like to introduce the challenges and barriers for accessibility, and also introduce a little bit the urban planners, transport planners view on multimodality and multimodal mobility systems on the local level. Then I would like to present some results from a study that we have done for the ACI and CSER working group on multimodality. So we have asked some airports for the airports about how people reach the airports, what are the main modes, what are the most popular ones. And finally, I will give an overview on some solutions for multimodal systems to enhance the accessibility of airports. But I can shorten it up, because those good practices have already been presented partly with Aeonics and TravelVoice. So I can make it a little bit shorter. So actually at Dornier, we have 3 teams in the business unit mobility. One is airport aviation, one is transport and railway. So that would have been probably the most interesting one for you, but I'm presenting the team of new mobility. So we are focusing on more or less on 4 topics. Some of them might be also interesting in this discussion and haven't been discussed yet. So on one hand, it's about automated, connected vehicles, but also connectivity, which is the time dimension of connections. So there's also a spatial connection, a spatial dimension, which is of transfers, which is more about the physical distances between one mode and the other. This is something that we are rather discussing on smart spaces, smart neighborhoods, but also smart cities. Then we are also talking about e-mobility, which is not that interesting for today. But we have already, Julie has already introduced the sustainable urban mobility plans, and airports are part of it. Over here, we are, from the urban mobility perspective, also talking about last mile mobility options to connect the long distance mobility options, because sometimes they are not in a walking distance, so sometimes you need to change several times, not only once, to go from rail to plane. Here, I think it's probably most interesting for you to learn a little bit about the discussion of mobility as a service, which has been going on for over 15 years and on the urban level. So there are already some experiences with diverse system of stakeholders and their reluctance to share data, for example, and maybe also some workarounds, some learnings from how some mobility as a service platforms on the urban level have succeeded in bringing stakeholders in and sharing their data in one way or the other. So first of all, just some thoughts about the term multimodality. So actually people prefer to have one mode. Monomodal mobility behavior has been very prevalent for last decades, or it's the multimodal connection of different modes of transport is rather new. So it started with a smartphone that you knew about where is the car sharing car, can I book it, can I make a reservation. The more flexible use of different mobility modes is relatively new, and still it's very popular to just take one mode, for example, to the airport, basically a car or a taxi. So from the user perspective, one mode, I start at my home and I arrive at the airport, is the most easiest part if there are no disruptions. But when we combine different modes of transport, for example, I could take the bike to the bus and then go to the airport, or I take a train and the train station is not directly at the airport, so I take a shuttle afterwards. Or I combine different three modes of transport. I take a taxi to the train and then again the taxi to the airport, which doesn't have to be a taxi, but it could also be a shuttle bus, a shared ride sharing. There are so many ways to go around today. Then these are new modes, and these are also new ways of going from A to B. For airports, it's and for passengers going to the airports, this also means that there are new options to go other ways to the airports, to choose other routes in case of disruptions. And I'm coming from Berlin. Berlin is not in all those nice projects because we have already quite a lot of trouble just getting to the airport. So it's the normal case that there are disruptions and that you try to find another way to get there. Maybe get a taxi, maybe even car sharing, maybe go by bus and then call a taxi. So this combination of modes of transport, 1 hour before you go to the airport, you start searching for other ways because you can see that the train service is disrupted. So this is managing this seems to be complex, but if you get the information and if you have physical elements provided just as an option, for example, scooter sharing, some shuttles somewhere, then the whole system could increase the accessibility. So as you can see here, usually the competition is less if you feel that you are contributing to a multimodal system and the common enemy is more or less the car. So you want people to change from the private car to anything. And in that case, you can already motivate stakeholders to collaborate, because the car sharing provider could profit by collaborating with rail providers, because all of them will reduce the car traffic overall. And people spend a lot of money for the car, which is good for airports. I know the parking income is quite interesting. But if you look at it from the congestion perspective, urban planners perspective, if you look at it from the, of course, environmental perspective, then it's more about working together to combat the car. If you don't have, and this is the main idea of multimodal systems. So multimodality doesn't always have to be intermodality, so you don't always have to combine modes. But if you have the option to choose between train, bus, different options, you may even get rid of your car. And this enhances the chance to take the rail, maybe not on every trip, but for the next trip, could also be used. So this whole system could be a real alternative to the car, because usually public transport is not enough, but if you can combine them and you make it comfortable and easy to combine them, then it could be an alternative. Also on the so for the users, it means also, it was quite interesting yesterday, somebody said there's not so much pre-booking of the connection to the airport. People just decide one day before, maybe some hours before. And this is exactly what, if you want to learn about the users, and the users for the airports are tourists, but it's also staff for everyday trips. It's also important to have a look at the staff. You have to understand what are their motivations. Is it, for example, someone who can afford more money to get a taxi, or are they dependent on public transport? What is their actual daily routine mobility behavior? Are they open to take a bike? There are several, we will see several airports who can be reached by bike. Some people will do it, some people won't. What are the attitudes? So these are kind of static preferences for a person. But then there are also those spontaneous trip-related preferences. So if it's raining, people will maybe change their mind and take another mode of transport. Do they have luggage, or do they have a service? We come back to this later, which transports the luggage to the airport. So the choices could very quickly change. And this is the main challenge, because if there are any disruptions, if people decide in the last minute or last hour which kind of train or connection they choose, it's you have to have real-time data, real-time information from all those mobility providers. And on this basis, people choose if they go for a train, if there are some cities where they can change between marine transport and then change to another connection. If they take a shuttle, if they can book a seat at a shuttle. So if there are disruptions, sometimes they are overbooked. Or if they take another individual mode of transport, not their own car, like scooter or car sharing, which is also a car, but it's shared. So these decisions are quite complex, and providing good information for those users would be good to know the customers a little bit more and their decisions, because they are different for every airport. The distances are different, the mobility options are different. So what can we learn from building up this urban multimodal systems? First of all, always having a platform, information is very important. There were so many cities, and we have also accompanied so many cities building up such platforms, which is already a challenge, because if you want to just provide information on those different modes of transport, the easiest part is to have open platforms for schedules. So public transport providers, railway providers are very open to share their schedule data. That's very easy. But when it comes to real-time data, it's already a little bit more tricky. But I think today it's also, there are so many open platforms where you get already real-time data. But when it comes to shared mobility providers, it's not only the competition to railway, for example, but there are also there are different providers, so they have a competition, and it's not only reluctance to share if there is any car sharing car available. It's also because their IT systems, the data systems are completely different. So they store customer data, which they won't share. Of course they can't. And I wouldn't be, as a customer, also not open if my ride-hailing provider shares all my data. But there are other ways. So you can, for example, location-based data, telling the user that there are 5 car sharing cars from different companies available is another way of providing information than just tracking all the users where they are right now and then sending individual information. So there are different ways of providing very useful information. And this is why the combination with mass platforms and mobility hubs is quite interesting. So to have different modes at one spot, because it doesn't have to be distributed everywhere so that everyone can reach it and very quickly. But there could be, particularly for airports, there could be corridors where those mobility options exist, or specific nodes in the city center where which you can reach and then you change to the train, for example. So the idea of thinking about such mobility hubs near, for example, next express train could be also quite interesting. Sometimes they are already talking to each other, but sometimes the urban mobility planners are not talking to the long distance railway connections. And then there is also, from the urban planners, I'm an urban planner point of view, it's also important to have all the other infrastructure there. So cycling path, here the connection, for example, the walkway to this venue is quite easy to find. Wayfinding, all these infrastructure aspects. So from the urban mobility point of view, airports are an important node, and they are an attractor. So people, not only residents going to the airport, tourists going back for flying back to their home, and also the staff are going there. So it's very important for urban planners and urban mobility planners to integrate airports into all those considerations, which is not always the case. And urban planners, transport planners have also developed quite a lot of tools to deal with accessibility, to calculate accessibility, to analyze user groups, and to see how they move around, and as customer groups, but also individually. There are some new tools where you can track individuals and see how they combine, for example, different modes of transport, and all GPDR conform. Okay, so let's see how, I present some insights from our survey. We have asked 40 airports what are the available modes of transport at the airports. So all of them, of course, have taxi. Buses are very, very important, rental car, bike. Interestingly, bike connections, which means that you have bike racks, you have storage options, you have bike path going there. Car sharing, also very interesting. Ride-hailing, of course, it's like taxis. Sometimes they are allowed and sometimes they are not allowed to enter. Shuttle buses. So this is multimodality. These are all the ways how people can go to the airport. And even if I want to, or if I have a commercial interest in attracting people to the express railway system, I have to know about this, because these are all the options. And users sometimes prefer other options than the railway. And then you should ask yourself why. What are the blockers, the challenges? But of course, regional, national railway commuter trains are also quite popular. So they're not popular, they are connected. But this is just available. So there are a lot of airports which don't have any metro connection or railway connection. It's more than half that we have asked. So what's popular? Very popular, bus and taxi. That's it. It also we haven't calculated, we haven't used only the airports that have a metro connection here. So naturally, just by calculation, the metro share is quite low, and high-speed rail share as well. But still, overall, people use the taxi and buses. And for the taxi, airports could have an interest to reduce this share. We haven't asked for the private car. So the private car is most popular, or is very popular at most airports. Because multimodality in our definition was more about different modes of transport, which could be an alternative to the car. So we were asking, what are the benefits of multimodality at airports? Most of the respondents said improved passenger experience, and that's exactly what I introduced: accessibility, different modes of transport. In case of the disruptions, I have other options. If there's just one bus going to the airport, like in Dublin, you can take a taxi. If there's no taxi, you miss the flight. Then, of course, reducing emissions, because if you don't take the car, this is the only way, or the best way, to reduce the overall emissions for the passengers and also the staff going to the airport. Higher efficiency, because a network is always more efficient than a single connection. And increased accessibility, of course. So what are key measures? So this is not only focusing on the railway connection, but on the whole multimodal system, integrated ticketing payment systems, very important, digital platforms for multimodal journey planning. So it is different but connected often. Real-time information, very important. Infrastructure measures as well. So you should also think about the digital, combining the digital layer and the the physical layer. Regulatory support, user-centered design, of course. And so over here, data sharing frameworks was a little bit lower, because this is just the back end somehow. And then what do you do after the data sharing? Afterwards, you have to build an interface. You have to talk. Well, we already talked about it in the other presentation. So it's not just the data sharing. It's more about the governance behind it. Different ways of data sharing, making data information. So just having the data is not always information. Campaigns and so on. So in summary, we were also asking for the challenges for multimodal mobility at airports. And multimodality also means seamless connections. So the transfers are really key and crucial. So on the one hand, that's mobility behavior in different aspects. People like to take the car. People don't want to change. Then there are financial situations, a broader term, but it's about, for example, that airports are interested in getting revenues from parking cars. So it's a conflict to sustainable urban mobility plans, for example. That stakeholder management, it's underestimated very often. It also means to acknowledge that people are sometimes not reluctant to share data, but they just can't, because they are a transport provider. They don't know about IT, so they know about their systems, how to see that there is a disruption, maybe sending an alert on their app, but thinking about how to aggregate data to make it not personal data. This is already not really their core business. And so it's also interesting to see which kind of maybe startups in Germany. We had a big program on digital mobility innovations, small startups who could fill this gap between those transport providers and the back-end providers. So building an interface which is usable for all stakeholders. luggage management, that's specific for airports, but we've already talked about the data privacy. And so on staff management, so we haven't talked about the staff yet so much, but there are a lot of people going to the airport and every day. So what do we do with them? How can we nudge them to take more environmental friendly modes of transport? And disruption management, we've already talked about it. So just some outlook on some solutions. So there are different, particularly EU projects, which are exploring currently how to integrate the data, how to bring those stakeholders together. So EONX, of course, good practice. But there are also local initiatives, like in Sweden, some trafficking, where they integrated different modes of transport. So nearly every city has a mass platform now, and they are all trying to also integrate the way to the airport. Then there's also some projects explore what to do in case of disruption, how to manage this. We have already discussed it, so I can jump over it. And also there are some nice examples of organizing the luggage already in other ways, so that, for example, some people are open to take the bike because they don't have their luggage on them. Also having apps not only for information, but to nudge people, to motivate people to use other modes of transport than the private car. So one part could be rail, but it could be, you could collect points, for example, which is particularly interesting for the staff transport, because this is on a daily basis, and then you could collect points and you could get rewards for it, for a green mobility behavior. So there's a lot going on in the urban area, and we, as an urban mobility planners, we are always thinking about the connection to the airport because it's a very important attractor. And perhaps the other way around would be also interesting to learn from the experiences which have been gained during the last nearly 2 decades on building up data sharing systems and so on. I jump over it. So multimodal mobility strategy could be interesting. Disruption management, main topic, but also nudging a modal shift, which means thinking about really how to attract people from the car to the whole system, to use anything else than a car for a better accessibility, but also for environmental reasons. Okay, so that's it now.
Thank you very much, Helga. Julie, do you want to come forward as well? So thank you both. Just to start, Helga, you spoke quite a lot about the journeys of getting people to airports, but you and I earlier spoke about one of the challenges you face is the distance between the stations at an airport and the actual airport. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that for us.
Yeah, so for the users, it's really, from the user's point of view, it's very stressful. It's really when you arrive at the airport in last minute, and you try to find the terminal. Particularly here, for example, Charles de Gaulle, they're trying their best with wayfinding, and it's very nice. But there are also some challenges finding the right terminal, running them, knowing the distances, and there are physical ways to help them. For the digital passenger navigation, which would be nice, but nobody has it really, because there's also a technical challenge, because within buildings you have to find another way. It's not just GPS. GPS works very well on the outside, but in the inside you have to work with Wi-Fi, for example, and so on. So I hadn't seen or experienced as a passenger so many good solutions for this wayfinding at the airport, and sometimes the distances are quite big. Yeah.
I think on that point, previous experience of mine, London Underground have a system of internal navigation that uses Bluetooth. It's primarily aimed at visually impaired passengers, or it could be open to anyone who uses Bluetooth modules in strategic locations to help guide you. So that might be one solution. I think this is a question for both of you, but I'll start with Julie, if that's okay. So going back to SUMPs, something you both mentioned, what are the mobility needs of airport users that SUMPs should consider? Because as myself and a few others said yesterday, a lot of the air rail into our passengers are in fact airline passengers, they're not rail passengers. So how you think they should be considered?
Go here.
Well, actually, speaking from the TNT perspective, what is important for us is that there is a coordination. In our TNT regulation, we provide an annex with guidelines to make sure that they are all speaking together. And what we heard, which is very difficult in the practical terms, is who will finance what in the end, because there are different authorities. I think in Paris it's well organized because you have Île-de-France that cover everything, Île-de-France Mobilité. But in other cities, you will have different actors. You will have the municipal level, the regional level, etc., etc. And for us, so the requirement is really to improve the connection and the mobility in the urban nodes, but to make the link, again, from a TNT perspective, with the wider network. And the airport are making part of the wider network, connecting also EU capitals. And yeah, we don't want also the urban nodes to be the bottleneck, because if you improve the quality of the connection between two airports or between two cities with high-speed rail, but in the end, when you cross the city, you need another 1 or 2 hours. Voilà. So we need to improve all those aspects.
How would you
Just elaborate. So I'm coming from the user perspective, and passengers going to the airport are always a little bit stressed out. So they're having their luggage. If there is any disruption, they really need comfort. They need to know where to go to, and they are very angry if they get wrong information. Like you can't catch the train, and you are late. And then you arrive at the airport in Berlin, for example, you can book a slot at the security and you do it when you arrive in the last minute. And it's just 50 minutes, and then your train is late and you miss your slot, and then you can't reach it again because you have to queue at the other end. So these kind of communication channels should be aligned, and they have to work really in real time, very quickly decisions, very quickly updates, because they are stressed out, and because of that they miss their flight, and then holiday is gone. And this is really strong. It's a stronger impact than on the daily trips if I can't reach my office in time. So very important to deal with it.
Yeah, I could work, but I can't go on holiday from home. So
Yeah.
So it's much bigger impact. And Helga, one for you, but it's with a view to TNT as well. So you showed quite a lot around mobility as a service and some of the apps being developed. I thought they were very similar to Citymapper, which I've used in London. With the advent of the TNT networks and the long distance rail, how do you see that integration working? So you've done your long distance journey. How do those apps speak? How do I get the information I need to move between both of those?
Just from my experience, so I worked for the Deutsche Bahn for some years, and it was quite good because Deutsche Bahn was also providing the last mile connections, and people are always going from home, from hotel, so there's always a last mile, and their system providing their car sharing, their bike sharing, and so on, it worked quite well. So I could take a plane to Berlin, then take the train to Hamburg, jump into a car sharing car if it's all in the same universe. And so this is how people travel. So they are not always working, living in the city where they start. Or I think that data-wise, the connections, the connectivity is there. It's not a big issue technically, but it's more about thinking about what are the physical nodes at the end, what are the modes of transport that you can choose, and if there's no connection, if the people, the stakeholders are not aligned, building up a common system of their competition and so on, people will never know how to get at the end.
I think NS in the Netherlands had a fantastic solution to that. So you can get off the train and then jump onto one of their hire bikes straight away. London tried it, but they are very segregated systems. So people tend to use line bikes and they leave them everywhere, which causes other forms of chaos. Julie, I have a question for you, maybe slightly challenging. So you spoke a lot about the benefits and the positives of 10T and the advent of particularly the long distance high-speed rail between places. Do you see that having any negative effects on, particularly as we're at an airport, particularly on short-haul flights around Europe potentially? Do you think it may adversely affect them, or could it help promote flights in other ways?
I think that there are short-haul flights that will always be there, because even if you have a good train connection, well, we cannot have a good train connection everywhere to connect all the European capitals. So if you want to reach Athens from Brussels, it's a bit difficult by train. However, I think that it's really important to improve, and there are maybe, yes, short-haul flights that will naturally disappear or will be there, but for connecting flight afterwards. And there are very good examples in Europe of, as I mentioned today, Paris-Bordeaux, Lyon, Marseille, that are connected to Paris. There is a real transfer from the flight to the rail. If you look also in Milan, Rome, or in Spain, they are doing great there as well, especially in high speed. And soon the airport of Madrid will be connected by high-speed rail. When it will be connected, of course, it will be a big change as well, because you could, from Brussels, to go to Madrid with final destination to Valencia, but you just in the airport, take the high-speed rail and you go to Valencia. So yes, you could have a kind of competition, but not really. It's more between airport that the competition will be in that case, I think. But it will be also a way to free capacity in some airport.
That is true. I had thought of it from the last one. I will open to the floor. Does anybody have any questions?
It's us between the lunch break and
No questions. Any more questions? Shall we? Cool. Yeah. Oh no, microphone over.
If not, I can say Wolfgang Schade from Germany. And actually, it's a bit to Helga. Or what we have heard so far is many presentations saying data sharing is the problem, and I tend to agree. But you said data sharing is not so much the problem. So I wonder, are those airports that you have asked not aware of the problem, or are they more advanced, have solved the problem? What is behind that different awareness or different conclusion that we see here today? Yes.
So I think probably the question asking for different challenges, they thought maybe they thought about the technical ways of sharing data, not really the stakeholders behind it. But it's always, if you know about data, how to make it information, and you use something, you process the data, then some problems are resolved. So if you just need to have an alert, for example, for a disruption, but not all the time sending real-time data somewhere, some problems like the data speed or anything is resolved. So the technical part is not such an issue. And then it's also the question, so maybe they tended to see stakeholder collaboration as a bigger problem. It could be combined with data sharing, but they see it as a bigger problem than the actual sharing of the data on a platform. And it's, I just wanted to mention quickly that it's sometimes not data sharing, it's also to open up APIs and to explain them and to open up an innovation system as well, to make people play, or smaller companies also play with these apps, not trying to do everything by yourself, but providing something to be more open. And so this also means that you have to process the data. You can't just upload all your customer data. And then if this step is done, then the actual sharing is maybe not such a problem anymore.
Thank you. Any more? Ringo? Yeah?
That's right. I shall call the session to a close. Thank you very much, Helga and Jules. Thank you.
Thank you.